quite up to date in advanced technology. And it would be an honor for us to listen to him this evening regarding the renal denervation therapy. It's basically, it was there a few years ago, and then it has again come back. Obviously, in the initial stage, there was some problem with the catheter. The data wasn't quite accurate, and therefore the company withdrew this device. But then there is a modification of the catheter, the technology. And now with the new technology, we are getting some good results. And hopefully with this presentation, we'll be able to educate ourselves more and would like to have future guidelines in the treatment of hypertension, particularly in those cases which are not responding to conventional antihypertensive medication. And I'm sure that this concept of nephrectomy or even renal denervation was there right in the beginning, long time ago, 1939, 1930 onward. It is a kind of re-understanding, resurgence of the mechanism of hypertension and its therapy. With that introduction, I think we have some great colleagues at the panel, so we can have a lot of interaction after the presentation by Dr. Hajra. Dr. Hajra, please.
Thank you, Ravinda.
So before,
yeah.
Sir, I'll take just a minute. Dr. Hajra and 3 of other colleagues are contesting in CSI elections. So I'll request that the PGI family votes for them. And the closing dates are before the 1st of November. So anyone who has not voted probably can vote, cast their vote. And another request is that Ratish, please introduce the other panel members before Dr. Hajra begins, so that we come to know about each other in a short 1 or 2 minutes introduction.
So who is the senior most out of the whole gang? Is it me or somebody else?
I think you are.
Or Dr. Hajra can do that because he knows most of us.
No.
We can introduce ourselves.
Yeah, that is
That'll be much better.
Start from Robin.
I did MD from PGI Chandigarh from 83 till 86, and then did DM, and I was the batchmate of Dr. Harinder Bali. We are together, and so we had a nice time in PGI long time ago. And Professor Wahi was my mentor. He wasn't director at that time. He was the head of the Department of Cardiology. And later on, during my DM days, he became the director of cardiology. And then Dr. Bidwai, Dr. Sapru, Dr. Khatri, and Dr. I.S. Anand. But I.S. Anand was very friendly to us. He was just a lecturer at that point of time. And with me, I think Dr. Prabhakar, 3 of us, and Dr. P.K. Ghosh. He came from Army. That was our batch of DM cardiology.
Yeah, I am finished. I am Dr. H.C. Kalida. I am contemporary to Dr. Rabin. I was just 1 year junior to Dr. Rabin. And I did DM from PGI Chandigarh with the same group of teachers which Robin had. We had some wonderful time with Dr. Bali, Dr. Chandrasekhar, Dr. Sarath, myself, Robin. We passed very good time over there. And now I am working in Assam Medical College, Dibrugarh. My part is the easternmost part of India. From my place, the Myanmar or China and Myanmar are nearer to me than Delhi. I am pleased that Robin could come to my place on several occasions.
Yeah, many times I've been.
Many times. As an examiner, as a teacher, as a guest faculty for our conferences. I love to get some.
I think your cath lab has been inaugurated by you.
Yeah, inaugurated by you only. Thank you very much.
Lisa?
Yeah.
I'm Dr. Ratish. I did my DM from PGI in 2015, and I was just junior to Dr. Smith. I learned a lot from them. And right now I'm working in Command Hospital, Calcutta. Thank you.
Right. So it's a nice way of beginning of recent advancement and decent understanding of resistant hypertension. My regards to Dr. Smith, Dr. Ritesh, Dr. Kalita, and none other than my professorial friend, big brother, Dr. Robin Chakraborty from Calcutta. 1945, this picture tells many things. The Churchill dies at the age of 91, but he had his first stroke at the age of 75. Roosevelt died due to hemorrhagic stroke with 260 by 115 millimeter of blood pressure. And that time, the medicine doctors could estimate the human blood pressure, and Stalin also died due to stroke. And none was on medical therapy because it was not there. In 1934, it's always good to go back to the history if you really want to come back to the future. 1934, surgical renal sympathectomy was introduced. It did give very good result on blood pressure reductions, but because of the side effects and during surgery, the anesthetic problem, it was abandoned. 1949, hexamethonium, hydralazine, resurfaced in 1954, propranolol, hydrochlorothiazide, guanethidine, and many studies came. Then in 1975, ACE inhibitor came, calcium channel blocker came. We have many studies like ALHART, ASCOT, and 2015, the SPRINT trial came, and we came to know that in non-diabetic hypertensive US population, if you bring down your blood pressure to 130 by 80, does reduce heart failure, unlike many other trials on the left side, which reduces stroke. And spiral of MET was introduced in 2017, that people without any antihypertensive drugs, they were tried on newer version of spiral catheter from Medtronic. And 2019 COVID came. COVID will stay there in 2020. COVID-21 we also face with due course of time. And there are three types of renal denervations. This is first introduced with a simple EP catheter, and many people of India are familiar with this kind of therapy in the heart, and especially the electrophysiologists like Dr. Robin Chakraborty and many other people. They have innovated and tried to replicate the simplicity kind of therapy to many patients. And ultimately what happened that this catheter was not available or was withdrawn for medical legal reason because the Simplicity trial 3 has failed to show that it does reduce blood pressure significantly more than the sham control. But if I discuss about the result, and it was a paper in JACC, and top 10 best paper in 2017 and 2016 came from India, and they did, and Mohan Nair was one of the author, and he showed that in chronic renal failure, doing radio frequency ablations by EP catheter 5 French can reduce blood pressure very significant amount without any complications.
Good evening.
So I am attending virtual meeting right now.
Okay, when you are free, please talk to me.
Okay. Then there was ultrasound. Then alcohol-mediated denervation is also reality now. If you go back to the pathology. In the kidney, you have I don't know why it is echoing now. After that, somebody must be using laptop and mobile. Please unmute yourself. Whoever. Sympathetic nerve, they are converging at the ostia of the renal artery, whether it is your main renal artery, left and right, or accessory renal artery. Then we thought that if you give energy, radiofrequency energy to these nerves, perhaps you will paralyze them permanently, or at least for 3 years, and it will be very effective. And later on, after a lot of post-mortem studies, we came to know that actually it is the reverse. The nerves, they converge towards the branching and sub-branching of the renal artery, whether left and right or accessory renal arteries, the pattern is same. And if you have accessory renal arteries, very important to ablate all of them, and it has to be more than 3 millimeter to be of radio frequency capable. That means your catheter will be able to go into 3 millimeter artery, and if it is not 3 millimeter artery, that will cause a lot of spasm, and that will cause a lot of pain, and that will not translate into efficacy. So this is one of the study published in 2020 from Japan, that this accessory renal arteries, the number of accessory renal arteries nerves are usually less than the normal renal artery, but the nerve size is similar. Now, coming back to the Symplicity spiral catheter, you have this kind of pattern of the electrodes. Like here, you have, this is the tip, and near the tip, it is 1, this is 2, this is 3, and this is 4. So you have 4 electrodes for 4 quadrants of radio frequency ablations of the renal artery. And these are at 5 millimeter gaps. And one is at renal end. That means you must remember, once you are giving command to your generator, you have to give command to the generator like 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 2, 1, something like that. So that cannot be changed. That means if you're selecting all 4, then you tell your AI, your machine, and you press all 3 buttons, that 1, 2, 3, 4, I'll tell you later on. 60-second energy, unlike your previous generation of catheter, who used to deliver 2 minutes of energy. Minimum 3 millimeter vessel is doable with this catheter, and maximum 8 millimeter of renal artery is doable. It is flexible, and it goes on 1-pore wire. Usually, we prefer Grand Slam on Ironman kind of coronary wire, because the delivery of this catheter, spiral catheter, will be much more easy on Grand Slam because of higher support. It is a monorail like your PTCA balloon, rapid exchange, and it is 4 French profile. And it's very nice catheter, easily trackable. It goes with 6 French guiding catheter, renal DC. It is torqueable. It is of single use, and the chip remains activated for 24 hours, like 3D ablation of atrial fibrillations. Tip is stretchable. Stretchable means if you push the wire, coronary wire, inside this snake, inside the mouth of the snake, the snake it gets lengthened and it becomes a straight one. And the generator is artificial intelligence wise controlled. That means that if the temperature goes up or it crosses the certain limits, then it automatically shuts down the whole system, or specifically the electrode which is generating too much of pressure, too much of heat. And if there is too much of heat, we do not know what will be the outcome of the renal endothelium, but it is preferable to stop ablation at that point, and you should rotate the whole console so that that electrode gets away from the burning zone. And if there is spasm of the renal artery, the same phenomena happens. The temperature, you can see the temperature on your console. There's an elegant generator, a very intelligent generator, and it tells you by sound that there is sudden rise of temperature, and then automatically it stops. If your catheter comes back to your guiding, automatically stops. So those safety mechanisms are there. You have to just wait for 60 seconds, and the rest of the things are done by the artificially control or artificial intelligence control of the generator. And previously thought both ostium should be ablated. Now we know it is IV. What is IV? I matlab, this is the main renal artery, that is I. V is the branching of the eye, and Y is branches of the branches. So that means you have to start from distal, then come to V, then come to I, and lastly at the ostium. The ostium is not that important like renal artery stenting. And if you follow this IV, you will get almost 92% to 100% ablation of the renal artery sympathetic nerve. By way of ablating, you are also ablating parasympathetic nerve, but we do not know how to map these, and the clinical consequence may not be reflected in the blood pressure or tachycardia or any other manifestations. But current dictum is go distal, and on the X-ray you will see, on DS you will see the silute, the renal silute. So your duty is to stay away from the renal silute. So your operating zone is this much. So if you have branches inside the renal parenchyma, forget about it. We do not have data to ablate inside the renal artery. Maybe better than what we are doing nowadays, but there is always an apprehension that may induce the CKD. But I'll tell you later that it is much more preferable to go inside the renal parenchyma even in CKD. And there is different depths. And this is a catheter which you have guided. You can start with left or you can start with right. Your coronary wire is inside one of the branches. So once it is there, then you load this spiral catheter with a loader there, and this rapid exchange or monorail part portion of the spiral catheter is little longer than the coronary balloon. That means most of the time this coronary wire remains inside the spiral catheter. So once you put this wire, then the catheter becomes straight like any stent or any balloon, and it goes inside the renal artery. And once you pull the wire out, then it becomes a spiral, and once it is spiral, it actually flips back by 3 to 4 millimeter or maybe 5 millimeter from the target zone where you have landed on fluoroscopy. So that means if you have landed your catheter in the renal parenchyma and the renal parenchyma free zone, once you pull the coronary wire out, you take it for granted the tip will be away from the renal parenchyma by 5 millimeter. So once you remove it, it becomes spiral, 4 quadrant, and it forms an arc inside the renal artery. So each and every point is important. It will avert on the endothelium, and if you really want to reintroduce, or if you are not happy with the branches or inadvertently entered into a wrong branch, you have to push the wire back on the tip, and it's very nice catheter, usually does not produce any dissection, any perforation, or any kind of trauma to the renal artery. So there is no renal death or cardiovascular death has been reported in more than 3,000 patients. Even if you push very hard, it flips back into the guiding catheter. So there is no chance of any complication so far reported in the literature. Now, once you are happy with the position of the RDC, you take one DSA by holding the breath. And in this case, the patient had very difficult angulations of the left renal artery branches. Now, in this DSA, the 2-3 things are very important. Your guiding is just at the ostium of the renal artery. I have taken 2 wires because the Grand Slam was not going inside this 90-degree angle of lower branch of the left renal artery. And this is the silute or the border between parenchyma and the non-parenchymal portion of the renal artery. And then I asked the patient to take a deep breath. So if you have this kind of angulations, if you ask the patient to take a deep breath, usually this renal artery straightens up, and I have taken on body wire to negotiate this catheter. So it's not an issue to push this catheter into a place where you desired So now once you have this kind of thing, you remove one of the wire, then you remove your Ironman or Grand Slam. It was Ironman here. Now once you remove, as I said, it forms or it abuts with the contour of the artery. Now this 1, 2, 3, 4 is very important. Like in this case, as I'm showing on the angiogram, you have good portion of the renal artery that is V portion of the, or Y portion, you can say. This is I, this is V, this is Y. So I'm not choosing Y here, I'm just choosing V portions, one of the branches. You can see nicely that all 4 electrodes are required to go for the first energy delivery. So once we remove that, then what I have done, I have pushed the coronary wire back into the parenchyma without too much of pressure. And once you push that wire, it is easy to move your spiral catheter forward or backward. So if you want to move forward, again push the catheter. If you want to move backward, again push the coronary wire, and the catheter will move as on the rail of coronary wire. Now, once you are giving energy, your coronary wire should come back inside the body of the catheter. That's the protocol. Because if you keep your wire, this electrode may not touch, or will not touch, or the machine will not deliver. Now, once you have selected certain portion, you must remember that I have ablated this zone. So this carina I have ablated. So in this case, I'm going into V again, and in V, I have omitted 1, I have taken 2, 3, 4. So this 1 was repetitive, so it must avoid. So I have chosen 2, 3, 4 in the machine, and I told the machine give energy. Now what the machine tells us, it tells us the impedance, as Dr. Chakraborty they do in EP or AF node ablations. It tells us about the impedance. The impedance usually in the renal artery to the tune of 250 to 300. And once you have good contact and once you start your ablations, the impedance should fall by at least 10%. So if you have a 10% fall, take it for granted, you're almost having a 100% chance of paralyzing those arteries, and it has been proved on autopsy study in animal. And you can see the temperature rising. As I said initially, if the temperature crosses certain level and the machine stops one of the electrodes, not all 4. If all 4 electrodes goes into high zone of temperature, all will stop. So it is basically, again, I'm saying, I'm repetitive here. You don't have to do anything. You have to tell the patient that if you're having pain, you just tell me, I'll give certain portion, a certain amount, extra amount of fentanyl. I usually give 100 milligram of fentanyl. In this, I gave 100 milligram of fentanyl, 4 milligram of midazolam because apprehensive patient. So this patient is 54 years old man, diabetic. His blood pressure, all the family members, 4 brothers, they suffer from coronary disease, uncontrolled hypertension through the tune of 180, 200, in spite of having multiple drugs. So this guy who had 2 stent because of the acute coronary syndrome, diabetics, about 5-6 years back in my hospital, was having empagliflozins plus 3 good antihypertensive like 10 milligram of amlodipine, hydrochlor, this is chlorthalidone 12.5 milligram, and telmisartan 80 milligram, and very small dose of beta blocker because of tachycardia 12.5 to 25 milligram. So almost 5 drugs. Now, how do you start this program? You start this program, you first take a consent from the patient, you explain them that your pressure is not under control, you are more prone for stroke, hemorrhage, etc., etc. This has been proved in pivotal trial in the registry in large number of people that if you go for this procedure, there is almost chance of reducing your systolic blood pressure and diastolic blood pressure. Systolic blood pressure by 40 millimeter to the maximum, minimum 10 to 15 millimeter of systolic blood pressure, 24-hour blood pressure, diastolic blood pressure, and your therapy is always on 24 hours, 24 minutes, every second, unlike your nadir and tap, peak and up and down of your blood pressure, these nocturnal variations or your non-responder, those kind of things you don't have to worry about, because you have a paralyzed nerve and they are working every second, every moment. So you can reduce your number of drugs from 4 to 3, 3 to 2, or if you are taking no drugs, then maybe you can stay without drugs, like in pregnancy, those who are planning pregnancy, those who don't want to take a drug before conceiving. So those kind of situations are there. So contraindication is CKD, but I tell you, this Mohan Nair and this Narasimhan Rao series, they have done in CKD patients especially, and the reductions of blood pressure was much more pronounced than normal people, and they did not have any complications of renal functions. So on the left, once you've done, then come back to the right, and in this case, the same procedure was repetitive, and you have this accessory renal arteries. In this case, I could finish left and right renal artery within 15 minutes. And once you take this call that I will go for 1, 2, 3, 4, you cannot stop in between. The energy cannot be stopped once you give a command. So be careful that which area you are contemplating to ablate, and it should not be repetitive. That means once you have ablated, there should be at least 5 millimeter gap between your next ablations. Remember that each electrode is actually at the distance of 5 millimeters, so it's a visual thing and nothing precise or precision there. Now on the accessory renal artery is very important that you should not miss out any accessory renal arteries. So all these can be done once you take abdominal aorta, a DSA by a pigtail. So in this case, the accessory renal artery was accessed by SIM catheter, SIM1, then he passed the Terumo, etc., and then we could the patient had pain only after finishing the left and right main. When we came to accessory renal arteries, though we had to repeat analgesia. It was not done under general anesthesia. Though in Germany, some people they do under general anesthesia. General anesthesia not required. 6 friends. Sheath is out on heparin. You close by ProGlide or manual compressions. Now the biggest questions or the controversy came that in sham control, how come a sham procedure reduces blood pressure? It is like that. It is the statistics, or if you analyze the statistics in the simplicity 1, 2, 3, there will be a lot of issues with the kind of analysis you had in simplicity. And the sham control, many people took drugs, medicines, without telling the investigator, and they have cheated the investigator because they started having symptoms. So in some people, you cannot keep them off drugs for more than 3 months ethically. So some people in spiral op trial has deviated from the protocol, and that is to the tune of 70 to 20%. And it was in simplicity almost 30% people did take the drug, but did not tell the principal investigator because they are starting the drug without any consent, and they are starting the drug on their own by another physician. And the physician told these sham control people that if you do not take this drug, you may die. He died due to stroke. So there was a fear and panicky, and that was not revealed. And how to detect those? So spiral op trial, they have done one thing. They have done this 24-hour ambulatory blood pressure monitoring plus drug testing. If you are cheating a doctor or investigator, you'll be caught. So if you are saying that in simplicity or in spiral op or in registry, you are taking drugs, if you're not taking drugs, your urine sample will be negative. And in the same sham control, if you are taking drugs, then your urine test for your metabolites like amlodipine or verapamil. So it was mandatory at 4 months, at 3 months, and 3 months, 4 months, and 6 months, that even in the sham control, they're not actually taking any drugs. So spiral op trial is a beautiful trial, and the mistakes they have done in simplicity has been corrected. Now, always that there is an issue of responder and non-responder. It's not that all will respond. And you know, this AF ablations, since Robin Chakravarty chairperson, if you ask him how many people of paroxysmal atrial fibrillations or chronic atrial fibrillations respond to your ablation, his answer will be to the tune of 60 to 70%. If you give CRT for heart failure, even with prolonged QRS, what is the response rate? It is 70%. So 30% of the people, even in CRT in AF ablation, do not respond to this kind of therapy. Still, it is class 1 indications. So we had to prove, the investigator had to prove that many treatments are already there where the response rate varies. So it is called regression to the mean. Regression to the mean, that means it is average out. Some will have 40 millimeters, some will have 4 millimeters, some will have 0 millimeter reductions. But ultimately, you go for the power of the test and the power of the trial. It was nicely powered, and for the first time, we had a hypertension trial where the analysis was done based on your Bayesian theory. So in Bayesian theory, it has been proved that it is an effective treatment, and this effect lasts for almost 3 years. And we have pivotal trial at a large registry. So it is a multifaceted therapy, ladies and gentlemen. It improves atrial fibrillations, ablation success, VT ablation success. Chronic congestive cardiac failure is another off-label indications. CKD hypertension, Felix Mahmood has presented a lot of papers. It's very effective because this sympathetic overactivity in CKD patient, dialysis patient, is much more than the normal people. And they are higher responder, more responders to radiofrequency ablations. Diabetic albuminuria can be reduced, so diabetic nephropathy can be stopped. VT storm, if you have VT storm, nothing works except your sympathetic ganglionectomy, cervical sympathectomy. Some people in Bombay, they are doing it, but it is very risky surgery. And reduces shocks, that improves battery life of your ICDs. It is a treatment for obstructive sleep apnea, where sympathetic overactivity, the pharyngeal spasm may be one of the role. It also works for isolated systolic hypertension, dialysis-dependent resistant hypertension. There is off-label indication. So it has been clubbed from the Simplicity 1, 2, 3, of on-made US patient reference spiral distal study. Up to 3,000 patients has been presented, where India is not included. Your neighborhood patients are not included. So Southeast Asian people are not included, not the African patients. Basically, it is Australia, Austria, Canada, Germany, Greece, Ireland, Japan, United Kingdom, and USA people. And these are the people who had a lot of comorbidities, CKD in 20%. This is real world study. Obstructive sleep apnea, OSA 12%. Blood pressure 166, 154. And it sustained reductions for 3 years, whether it's elderly, diabetic, resistant, non-resistant, APE, non-APE, isolated systolic hypertension, non-isolated systolic hypertension. It is a continuous process. As long as patient lives for 3 years, the effect of renal denervations is quite obvious, that it keeps on adding some numbers on the lower side. So column on your right hand side becomes taller and taller, and it is persuasive, it is statistically significant, and it is variety of subgroups. This is basically a pivotal registry kind of thing published in Journal of American College of Cardiology 2020 in TCT Connect. The Taiwan has included even in secondary causes of hypertension. Once your this pheochromocytoma is out, if your adrenal tumors are out, if your coarctation is out, you can still go for this kind of therapy. Italy has changed; they have adopted, and there is no safety issue. And if you continue these patients and follow up, there is more sprint-like BP control, which is almost 2 times than the normal populations at US. This is basically spiral off trial, RD and SAM control, quite obvious, and the number of responders are more. And we have now off-made and on-made trials. Also, you have to go for detail of the trial in the Lancet. And in essence, it is very effective, and it is quite simple solution for many people who does not want to take medicines and who do not respond to 4 or 5 drugs, exhausted, side effects, peripheral edema, hyperkalemia, and these are the inclusion criteria. And it works across all comorbidities, and it is additive to your other therapies like ablation I have mentioned, smoker, non-smoker, and in spiral of trial, and this is known to everybody that p-value is significant in Bayesian theory, in hypertension, radiant solo by ultrasound, spiral of medicines, spiral on medicines, the column or the reduction is almost, there is homogeneity, but numbers can be variable, but the effect is similar, and there is a lot of similarity than dissimilarity according to the response rate. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is very important trial and is a game changer in the field of hypertension. And this VT storm, there is a case report. VT storm has been reduced. The renal denervation, albuminuria has been reduced. CKD patients, they do response. It is quite intuitive to start this kind of therapy. Ischemia-related arrhythmia is reduced. And with this thing, I will stop here. I'll leave some time for discussion. Thank you very much for giving me some time to. Thank you for your attention. Give me some time too. Thank you, everybody, for your attention. Over to you, sir. Over to you, Ravinda. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello. Good evening, Dr. Hajra. Myself.
Questions,
Yes,
please.
sir.
Question answer.
Dr. Hajra.
Yes, sir.
Regarding non-responder to treatment, what do you think there was inadequate ablation or some selection bias of patient like isolated systolic hypertension? They do respond less to the denervation procedures. And second thing is regarding RDN. RDN, as per literature, few cases in one study, debut heart hypertension study, 6 patients out of 30 patients, they were taken who underwent R&D, and they were also having multiple drugs and the BP was still uncontrolled. And they underwent BAT treatment and they responded very well to this one. So now regarding non-responder, so I want to like your opinion. So which aspect is more important, rather it is selection bias or is it inadequate denervation or requirement of some other procedure?
Right. So to answer the first question, who will be the responder? That cannot be. Can you talk to one of the?
Yes.
There is a lot of echoing. Yeah. Thank you, sir. So if you have a patient who has got uncontrolled hypertension, and if you do everything perfectly, like all 4 quadrants, all IV, all the protocol, all the procedural tips and tricks you have followed, still there can be around some people who may not respond to your therapy. Now, the response rate is much higher if you follow all these tips and tricks and protocol. Now, if you have non-responder, most likely that some of the zone or some of the nerves are not actually paralyzed. So the fault lies with your procedures. That is intuitive and logical thinking. And if you have a kind of salt intake, if you're not following lifestyle modification, you still continue to take alcohol, smoking, and no restrictions, and he thinks that hypertension is just like a gallbladder surgery, and you have done RDN, is the end of hypertension. No. So you have to continue lifestyle modification. And like any other nature's therapy, it doesn't mean that everybody will respond in a similar fashion. As I was mentioning, and Dr. Ravinchakudu can enlighten further, that even in AF ablation, there will be some recurrence, there will be some non-responders. Like in CRT, you have responders and non-responders. So if they do not respond to the first therapy, you have to come back and perhaps you have to do it after 3 months. So there are reports of second denervations. After second denervations, they become little bit extra responders. So 66% is the truest sense that gives a significant reduction of blood pressure and this 10 millimeter systolic and 5 millimeter diastolic. If it is not there, that means they are non-responders. And as you said, sir, some second question I forgot. Anyway, Dr. Ravinda and other people, Dr. Kalita can chip in here.
Dr. Hajra, a very simple question. Could you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. See, RAS system is very, very important in, particularly in context of development of soft So anybody losing some fluid or blood or whatever may be, it is the rest system which compensates. And after decompensation only somebody develops shock. My hypothesis is if we denervate the renal arteries, then is it likely, hypothetically or theoretically, that they are more prone to develop shock in the event of some loss of fluid?
Yeah.
Which is very, very important for protection of life. Are they
Yeah.
more prone to develop shock?
Okay, that's a great question. I would say that will take us to the next journey of radiofrequency ablations in the systolic heart failure. Now, 110 millimeters should be the minimum blood pressure before you do anything on the renal artery. So there is definitely a scientific chance and there is a pathophysiological chance of developing hypotensions in chronic congestive cardiac failure, systolic HEP-REP people. There are a lot of studies available now that by changing your sympathetic nerve activity like beta blocker, you have a BAT system in the carotid, which is US FDA approved, that there is always a chance of bradycardia, there is always a chance of hypotensions if you are doing it in systolic heart failure. But in diastolic heart failure with preserved ejection fraction, those things are usually not seen. Now, in pure hypertension, if you have those kind of phenomena, you must be more than happy. There is also, if you have started with 140 by 90 millimeter blood pressure, if you do radiofrequency ablation, there is those kind of people may develop hypotension, but not those kind of people who has got 200, 180 blood pressure. I tell you one case history published in JAG by Dr. Mohan Nair, and this is a lady who had dialysis, and Mohan Nair, he is in Holy Family, Delhi. He's from GB Pond DM Cardiology, and he did radiofrequency ablations of this patient who was on dialysis. Next morning, this patient had hypotension, and the nephrologist thought that this lady has developed or has some renal artery perforation and is bleeding from there. So next morning they checked the renal artery was perfect, and out of 6 medicine, she was not on any antihypertensive next 3 months. So those kind of super responders are seen, but these are more seen with CKD people, not with the normal hypertensive people. So we are also learning, this is my first experience, but I have searched the literature that in severe hypotension is, and people going into postural syncope is intuitive, it is logical thinking, but does not happen in reality.
Thank you.
I think there are a couple of points we must remember while taking the patients for renal denervation therapy. Firstly, the systolic blood pressure must be persistently elevated more than 150 millimeter marker. And what happens that it should exclude something like white coat hypertension related to anxiety, those kinds of things. So maybe as a first line of therapy, RDN is not being permitted as of now. We have to ensure that the patient remains on medication, but despite conventional medical treatment, systolic blood pressure doesn't go below 150. That should be probably at the moment should be the cutoff point. The other thing we should also remember, there is a trial going on, the two trials, one is hypertension on-med spiral, off-med and on-med trial. I think on-med the data hasn't come out as yet, isn't it?
No.
Yeah. So we have to wait till the on-med data comes out. Whatever you are talking is off-med data. So that is the reason why you have to wait for a longer period of time. Coming back to the EP study, as has been repeatedly mentioned, in fact, Mohan was very keen to do, and in fact, I was extremely enthusiastic at that point. I did quite a few, but results are not very good actually. It just happened some of these patients responded. The reason is that is not that because we did not know how to go about it. It is just a kind of a I think a kind of a fun that we thought let's take some EP because we are good in doing ablation. We thought okay, we'll take a catheter inserted in artery, but we did not know the details of the nerve distribution, the branching pattern, all those kinds of things were not known by us, even in the literature. Till the data came up very late. That is very important. The catheter technology has changed the understanding of the anatomy, the location, and the proximity of the renal nerves vis-a-vis the arterial lumen. That is very important, so that we can have a good contact, which wasn't there earlier. We thought that the renal ostial region, maybe the renal artery, main artery, was the primary source. We took many years to understand that no, it is the digital part what is very important. That is very important. One of the important factor at the moment is the cost. Cost is very prohibitive at the moment for the renal reduction therapy. So I think Prakash and others might talk to the industry and ensure that the cost comes down. But obviously, if we do more and more, get more and more sort of data to substantiate the what is called the appropriateness of this procedure, then the cost will definitely come.
Yeah, that is very important. Like, and in Indian scenario, everybody wants to know whether this catheter can be reused. If there is a reusability, like your 3D ablation catheter in air, it has to be done on Sidex because it has got a lumen inside, unlike your EP catheter.
And it has to be done safely, actually, within 24 hours time.
It has to be, used within 24 hours. And those kind of things we can talk offline, but for the timing and the scientific discussions, reusability should not be discussed. So one catheter per patient, it is on humanitarian ground right now on the government of India, and you have to take the permission of assistant drug controller before you go ahead. But you have to have a patient's consent. They will take interview of the patients telephonically through their WhatsApp number, and they have to have at least 2 antihypertensive medicines like Spiral on medicine trial, and you have to show that their blood pressure is more than 150/90 in spite of taking 2 good doses of antihypertensive. One of them should be amlodipine, and second will be your diabetic.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
I think the indication for patients, practical indications, like some of the studies have shown that patients who are obese, who have a lot of sympathetic overactivity, they are likely to respond. So shall we select like that? Not all patients of hypertension or resistant hypertension may not respond. They say increased norepinephrine levels in the body or the renal spillover, those patients are likely to respond, even though we don't have a clear-cut measuring criteria or technique for that. But clinically, suppose obese patients with they have increased sympathetic activity, probably they are likely to respond. That's what some of the literature says. So, what do you think, sir?
You are absolutely right. It is basically
they may not respond. Only overload patients may not respond to this, so that we can take the idea.
So, okay. So there are many methods of doing sympatholysis. You can do it surgically. You can do it chemically by beta blocker. You can do it by ultrasound. You can do it by alcohol, like Pergenin catheter. You can do it by heat, like radiofrequency ablations. Now, every patient is different. Every human body is different. Like Dr. Rabin Chakravarty's nerve activity in his brain, it might be higher than mine. So he's sympathetic, his gray matter may be higher than mine. And he's the most intelligent person in Calcutta as a cardiologist. And every patient's sympathetic nerve, their mapping of their concentration, number of nerves, the sizes are same. But the density of the nerve may be different in obese people. Now, there are a lot of data now that obstructive sleep apnea or in atrial fibrillations. What is the direct evidence? You do radiofrequency ablation of the animal, of the renal artery. You take out their this atrial biopsy, atrial myocardial biopsy, and you can show them that a regression of fibrosis in the atrial myocytes. So there is indirect relationship between your sympathetic overactivity and the ventricular myocardial fibrosis, etc. So that's why the VT storm is reduced. The A success is increased. VT ablation success is increased. Obstructive sleep apnea, obesity, atrial fibrillation, metabolic syndrome. It is also a kind of treatment for diabetes. If you ablate the celiac axis, and there are a lot of trials, like Horsever is working on type 2 diabetes by ablating celiac axis. If you ablate the celiac axis, your sympathetic overdrive, sympathetic drive to your stomach, to your liver, where the glucose is stored, will be lessened. The glucose output will be less. Your diabetes will be corrected. And if you have obesity, sleep apnea, if you have this pharyngeal nerve overactivity, if you have alcohol, if you are obese, your pharyngeal nerves may be indirectly paralyzed by this cross connectivity. So if your brain and kidney works in tandem, in synergy, that's why even within obstructive sleep apnea, it is helpful. So these are kind of theories. You have the greater splanchnic nerve. which is actually lying on your on the right. If you ablate the right splanchnic nerve, greater splanchnic nerve, but if you ablate both splanchnic nerve, you will have hypotension and hypovolemia, because the splanchnic volume is the reservoir of water. So there is a theory that if you ablate the greater splanchnic nerve on the right side, which is below the 12th intercostal vein, and if you go from internal jugular vein into that nerve, and if you go by vein, that nerve energy, the energy will be delivered from vein to the nerve, and nerve will be paralyzed indirectly. It's very difficult to localize nerve, but you can go, but nerve usually follows one artery or one vein. So these are all futuristic, as I said. It is class 3 for the timing for hypertensions, and every patient is different. Every responder and non-responders are different. It is a new science. I also do not know what is the science, but there is science we are trying to develop in Indian patients and in many patients who needs this kind of therapy, like uncontrolled hypertension.
And so there are other therapies also. Where we would like one is baroreceptor activation therapy, lacking, and another thing like we have. This was a part of discussion. I did a bilateral renal artery stenting of a young lady, and next day she had 110, but she developed shock. Because probably for last 22 years, she had her blood pressure of 190. And for her, the first blood pressure next day post-procedure, when we made her to sit up, and she developed a vasovagal and had collapse. So we had to revive her. So does this thing probability here also in RDN patient, or the decrease is gradual here? Because I guess the decrease in renin-angiotensin tension should be gradual in RDN rather than a drastic decrease.
Right. So it's a great question, great observations. In RDN, in my patient, his blood pressure is 128/80. On the very first day, almost 12 days. He's on 2.5 milligram of amlodipine, and he's off other drugs, to be very honest. And this is my first patient, so this is basically maybe a chance also. But if you go to the pivotal trial or pivotal registry, there are many people who had a stent. So stent is a contraindication. If you have a renal artery stent, your energy cannot be delivered to the nerves because they were metal and there is intimal thickening. So renal stenting is excluded for the timing. Who knows, maybe in another trial will say, no, in renal artery stenosis, those people, they will respond better. Now, renal artery stenosis, if it is bilateral, if your renal function is all right, you can go ahead and do the renal angioplasty. Aortoarteritis, hypertension, you go ahead and do the renal angioplasty. If it is hypertension, flash palmedema, you can go. Somebody's yeah. So if you have flash palmedema, you can go and do the renal stenting. People, doctor, renal angioplasty those golden days, but nowadays we're not doing. This is because there is no sustained benefit of hypertension. But there are certain people, and these are niche kind of indications that renal artery stenting can be done. Fibromuscular dysplasia is another category of people where renal angioplasty, simple balloon angioplasty works. So you must rule out secondary cause like renal artery stenosis due to atherosclerosis, and you should focus on essential hypertension, primarily essential hypertension, because that is on-level indications. Others are off-level. Now, carotid artery stimulation creating arteriovenous fistula by a stent in the femoral artery, femoral vein, did not see the light of the day because you develop thrombosis of the femoral vein. And next is a hypertension backbeat pacemaker. So that is another beautiful concept of treating hypertensions by putting a pacemaker which will alter the AV interval continuously, and that will puzzle the mechanism or the artificial intelligence of the pacemaker and the carotid body. So carotid body does not understand which one is systole, which one is diastole, which way to fire. So they get paralyzed by epigenetic mechanism. And then the gene changes, the carotid receptor sympathetic pattern changes, it controls the hypertension. So there are a lot of new therapies. CCM also works by stimulating the myocardium during the refractory period, and it is epigenetic mechanism. So we still do not know which way it works, but for the timing, we think that it is sympathetic, and the non-epinephrine level goes down in your urine. If you observe your urine at 24 hours, 48 hours, there is at 3 months, 6 months, your non-epinephrine level in the urine goes down significantly after radiofrequency ablations or any ablations anywhere in this body where sympathetic nerve are concentrated.
So there are 2 questions in the chat box, sir.
Yes, Mithya.
So
You can read it out. I can't make out where those questions are.
okay, I'll read it out. Saurabh wants to know what are long-term complications of renal sympathetic denervation, and Sumit wants to know effect of RDN on renal autoregulation.
Right. First question, there is no side effect like perforations, dissections in 3,000 patients, renal death, and people died due to renal cause or cardiovascular death or stroke. You can have small hematoma in groin, and it is up to 3 years. We have 3 years data from the pivotal study plus your pilot study of 80 patients from your Simplicity 1, 2, 3. And you have almost 4,000 people presented by Felix Mahmood. There is not a single death been reported, not a single perforation has been reported. CKD incidence is only, I think, 0.1 or 2 or 0.1%, something like that. It does not deteriorate renal function until unless you ablate the renal parenchyma. Stroke, there is no chance of dissection of the renal artery because there is such a simple thing. You should not push a lot of, it is basically doing any other procedure in the coronary artery. And what is the effect of RDN on renal autoregulation? So that is another very intelligent question. As I was telling you, renal artery is surrounded by parasympathetic and sympathetic, lymphatic system, many other things, paracrine actions of the renal parenchyma. We are paralyzing both sympathetic and parasympathetic because these are the nerves. Also, to some extent, lymphatic system, which is surrounding the renal artery, is also paralyzed. But that cannot be measured. So let us concentrate on sympathetic and parasympathetic. So these are usually paralyzed completely and progressively over time. So the nerve starts dying on the very first day, very first hour, very first minute. But they keep on dying with time. And there is no chance of regeneration of this nerve up to 3 years. So there are autopsy studies available. Those people who have died after radiofrequency ablation, not due to RDN, due to heart attack, due to stroke, due to your renal failure, due to cancer, their kidneys has been examined, and they have shown this renal artery remains pristine clear up to the time of death. And they have also seen that the parasympathetic staining and sympathetic nerve staining, there is progressive loss of it cannot be seen in one patient. The one body somebody dies. So it's in some patient at 6 months, in some patient at 9 months, some patients 12 months. Those who have done autopsy studies. So data are limited, but one thing is quite clear that the nerve dies with time. They are paralyzed at least for the timing. There is always a fight between the nerve to win or your sympathetic RDN to win. So one win. If your RDN wins, you become hypertensive to normotensive. If your nerve wins, then you become non-respondent.
There is a registry, GSR registry of 3,000 patients, where only one patient had dissection, and that was catheter-induced initially. That was not procedure related.
Yes, guiding catheter.
Yes, and there is one registry in 2013 involving around 12 studies and 570 cases. In those registry, renal artery stenosis on follow-up was seen in around 7 cases. And in this registry, the recent registry, the renal artery stenosis was seen in 18 cases. Do you think that this renal artery stenosis is in its natural course or is a complication of ablation?
Okay, so with the spiral catheter, you can have with the spiral catheter, the catheter is so simple, so supple, so soft, it is not seen. It was seen with the previous generation of hard pipe French catheter. It was like EP catheter, and that was not so user friendly. So you are quite right that these are clubbed patients, and these complication has been clubbed. So if you follow the trend, of complication like LA closure, with time all over the earth, all over the planet Earth, the number of complications after LA closure or any device-related issue has come down. And similarly, when the technique improves, the technology improves, the doctors become more intelligent, they see more cases, and that definitely complication is coming down. That includes renal artery stenosis. Any injury to any artery can cause, even I have seen a patient after angiography developing femoral artery stenosis. Left main ostial stenosis has been seen after angiography. So those kind of things are unpredictable. Similarly, if your catheter is of large size, if you produce any endothelial trauma, and I'm sure Dr. Kalita and Dr. Ravin Chakravarti will agree with me that if you denode or injure any artery in human body, anywhere, any vein, any lymphatic system, any nerve, by mechanical trauma, there is always a chance of having intimate hyperplasia that can cause renal artery stenosis. Now, it is conjectural whether if your renal artery has caused the renal artery stenosis. How do you know that it is not atherosclerosis? So it may be a chance phenomena because you have put a catheter there and you are implicating that catheter has got renal artery stenosis. Why not this patient has got atherosclerotic renal artery stenosis when you followed them up? So you have to see the lipid content of the renal artery stenosis, the autopsy study. You have to show that it is intimal hyperplasia rather than atherosclerotic plaque in your renal arteries. So that will explain whether it is your RDN or it is your hypertension and atherosclerosis, smoking, diabetes, etc. So very difficult answer, but your question puts another questions whether you have long-term sequelae of renal denervation. I think your answer lies your own questions, and you have already mentioned that perhaps in the future,
Yes.
there is no chance of renal spiral catheter.
I think that's it. So if all the questions are being answered, is more than an hour now. So is there any more questions? If not, then maybe Smith, you can just sort of make some future plans for how we are going to proceed further, because it's a big group.
So we'll soon be, I was down with COVID again. So tomorrow is my last day of isolation. And then between I had my mother's demise also. So very soon, sir, we'll be having a bank account made, and we'll be trying to go as per the constitution laid by the Registrar Society. And this will continue every month, sir. So 4th Saturday of every month we'll have class, and next topics around 6-7 topics have been already decided, and speakers have been decided. Only thing is, this time it was this time we were doing it for TAVI, but then has gone for training, and we got a chance that we can rope in Dr. Hajra, because he has created a history, and it should come to PGI cardiology first, then to let it go to others.
Yeah, this is my first speech. Yeah, I never spoken, and
Yes.
it is my pleasure that you have given me a chance. And show must go on, like you're doing a
Sir, it will definitely go. Only thing is that I request.
There's one more suggestion to Prakash and Smith, to both of you. As we all know that a lot of our PGI cardiologists, even in other specialty also, they are in other parts of the world, like USA and other thing, and having a very important position in their own field. So, and many of us, we know them personally. So if possible, sir, we can also connect them. And I'm sure that if we request, they will be very happy to participate in this.
Yes, of course.
Sir, this is, it's a replica of whatever morning classes we have. That is how I see it. So anyone who has done anything in cardiology from PGI will like to have it. Like we have expert panels from ours, we like to have speakers from us and topics from us. Like the greatest example is Dr. Hajra today. So you can connect, sir, and we have slots. We can always accommodate them. We'll welcome them, and that is the best we can have, sir. And the request is that let's increase the attendance, sir, because there are around 160 of us here, and today we see only 42.
But at the same time,
So
the attendance need not be all from PGI. Even the postgraduate students of the from the institutes and other places, if the industry taster of becomes a little proactive, and they can connect with a lot of postgraduate students, other doctors, physicians. I'm sure if this is a good forum, especially academically very strong forum. Many doctors will be interested to listen from us.
initially 2-3 talks we had allowed non-cardiologists also, but then our members had few reservation that we want it to be like morning class, so we can have some certain things which are exchanged here, which we would not like to share it with others. So then we had that reservation that let's limit it to, we can have a fight here. We can argue like we used to do it in morning classes, and that may not be good with the other departments. So that is the idea. If anyone, I'm open to everything, sir. But I also think that there are other forums also where they can come in. Let's keep it exclusive for cardiology purpose and cardiology family. And
Yes.
I'll definitely I'll be in touch with you. You suggest what topics and what speakers we can include further. So that
Sure. I can probably get somebody from overseas and they can talk. For example, in
Yes, sir.
Australia, we have got people. You got people in United States. A lot of people I know personally.
Yes, sir. So that would be
Sir.
great, sir.
And Prakash also, I'm sure all of you.
Yeah, I think a lot of eager people, they want to participate in this August forum. Let us keep it amongst ourselves for the timing. Though the attendance is only 30-40, but these are hardcore PGI. Our sentiment should be respected. That they have other chances of having our conversation. Definitely, privacy is important, and it is a core group. So it doesn't matter if it's 30 or 160 joins. But I'm sure if you keep your content good, if you keep a speaker like Dr. Robin Chakraborty or Chandrasekhar or Saibal, they can mobilize can create interest amongst the non-participant or non-responders. I think there will be responders all the time. There are mild responders and non-responders. So we need to make non-responder to responders by bringing
Yes, sir.
all the dignitaries.
Well
Sure.
categorized. Well
Yeah.
categorized.
I think that's perfect. But I personally feel that DM and DNB students, they lack a lot of academic exercise. So I think this forum would be very, very effective for them.
I think this may be because of Saturday also, but Saturday right at this time in Corona crisis doesn't play any role to decrease the attendance on this forum.
Yes.
Yeah.
And moreover, sir,
Secondly,
the videos are.
I keep posting certain slides which I get. Similarly, you also keep posting
Sure.
certain new small. This should be small visuals, some videos, some place, so that the juniors also learn from these small presentations, the micro presentation. We can have a Twitter page of PGI Chandigarh, Twitter cardiology. Like many big people in US, they have Twitter page.
Yes.
Yes,
That
sir.
is very good part of
plan
you,
to
sir.
that. We have one YouTube channel, sir, where all these videos are uploaded. So that is one. And second lecture by Dr. Hajra, which is planned maybe 2-3 months down the lane, where he'll be teaching us the tricks of modifying the available gadgets in cath lab and how to bail out whenever. So
Jugaad,
we
jugaad.
have that also.
Punjab
Jugaad.
Jugaad.
Jugaad,
Yes.
Jugaad technology.
Jugaad.
Yeah.
So I think, sir, we
But
can
Dr.
call it
Hajra,
day by day.
Dr.
Yeah,
Hajra
sir.
Dr. Hajra keep on updating us in our group. That is very good part. Very good role he is playing on this forum.
Sometimes
Of
I
course.
feel that I'm disturbing some people, but
No,
when I
no.
saw that also
No, not-
Dr. Chanda in another group. There's another group called Shock Calcium. There are a lot of good people. Dr. Vitisha, they see. I mean, you can see what time they're seeing, what time reading your comment. And a lot of good people, they still want to keep updated. I mean, it's our duty, whole group's duty,
Sir,
PGI duty. Yeah.
that is a part of stimulus you are giving to everybody to be updated for any new thing.
Okay, I think we chip in Dr. Kalita, Dr. Robin Chakraborty, other, Sojatra from this part of the country, and definitely we can contribute.
Yes, sir. My
Yeah.
limitation is that I know more people only till 2000. not before that. That is how. So there you can probably provide me with contact and their expertise in what field they have, and we can.
You are doing a splendid job, and keep on doing. I mean, we are all enjoying. We are behind you. We'll give all technical and logistic support. Dr. Ravin Chakraborty is one of my mentor. You know, whatever I've done in Calcutta, got a back. I mean, to be very honest, no hypocrite. That in the back of my mind, I'm there. There's one of my friend who will support whatever off-level thing I do, because I know that I'm scientifically correct. So he's a teacher, he's a brother, he's a mentor. So you'll get a lot of supportive people in this forum. Please carry on. That's my last comment for the day.
Yes, I think it's a wonderful evening. Thank you very much. So please post our next program, and I'm sure that we try to engage more and more. It will become very popular. 100%. New generation. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.